Hey, is this thing on? Oh, are you a fan of energy? Are you a power plant? Yes and yes. And here's how. You, as a consumer, are consuming your energy. Energy comes in the form of carbs, comes in the form of fats that we can burn. Carbs is a ring of carbon, and fats are a string of carbon. When you consume carbon, whether you are getting fats or carbohydrates, you can then take that and burn that through a process known as cell respiration done in the mitochondria to make your chemical energy, which is ATP. ATP powers all of the working proteins inside of your cells. These are enzymes. This is what we work on. This is our cellular battery, but we must burn sugars, carbs, or fats, which are all made of carbon. And that comes from the stuff that we eat, which is why it's super important to eat actual real things that are alive, because real things that are alive, like broccoli and chicken, has actual carbon in it, actual fats, actual carbohydrates that we can burn in our mitochondria through the process of cell respiration to make the ATP to power all of our working enzymes. Okay? Now, this is what every animal does, as well as decomposers, fungi and bacteria, is they are all consuming things. They're all stealing that from something else, right? Or getting the gift of that from something else that's alive. Plants, producers, are the most magic of all because they can convert the sunlight energy and carbon dioxide, pulling it from the air to make their own sugar, specifically glucose. And they are made of all of that. Their entire structures and our entire structures largely are all based on carbon. We are carbon-based life forms. So they pull the carbon out of the air in the form of carbon dioxide, and they go through the process of photosynthesis in their chloroplasts to make all of their structures, which are made out of sugars or strings of sugars, which is carbs, or when they break those sugars, they can create strings, which are lipids, fats, which make the phospholipid bilayer around every single organelle inside of the cell, as well as around every single cell. This is done in the chloroplast with an enzyme known as chlorophyll, and all you have to do is shine light on that bad boy and make sure that it's exposed to carbon dioxide. So everything that is green is absorbing that sunlight and absorbing most of that white sunlight and reflecting only the green. So the Roy G. Biv of the rainbow, we're absorbing the Roy and the Biv, but not the G. The G gets reflected, which is why everything is green that is growing as a plant producer. It is producing its own structures, whatever it needs, its own energy and structures out of this glucose that it makes through photosynthesis, which is light making. Then we benefit from all of that. Primary consumer is what directly eats the plant. So anytime you eat plants or herbivores, omnivores that eat plants, that's a primary consumer. Then if you are eating the primary consumer, you're a secondary consumer, and then if a tertiary consumer, and then you can be a quaternary consumer. And then if you are eating dead stuff or poop, you are a fungi or bacteria, which takes dead things or poop and breaks them down into their nutrients, which go back into the soil, and the producer can then soak that up and mix it with the water, carbon dioxide, and the sunlight to get everything that it needs. Because it gets most of what it needs from the carbon dioxide and water and sunlight in order to make its structures, but it also needs other elements because we're carbon-based life forms, but there's a lot more than carbon, okay? Which is why we have to have healthy foods and get all the nutrients that we need. Plants get all the nutrients that they need from soil. If that soil is healthy and has decomposers, bacteria and fungi breaking down dead things in order to put those nutrients, those elements into the soil for the plant to soak up, okay? Now, when there are tons of living things and tons of producers, lots of growth, lots of life, growing over a significant amount of time, and it builds up, if you then pile all of that together by a volcano or an earthquake or some other form of subduction, if you can pack all that together and crunch it up over a long period of time with lots and lots of pressure, what happens is you take all of that carbon, all of those sugars, all of those fats from living things, either plants or animals, and you compress it and you get fossil fuels. That's why they're called fossil fuels, because they are made of dead living things. And that is made of carbon. Carbon is a fuel. And so coal, oil, natural gas, propane, kerosene, all this stuff is from dead living things. And all those things can burn. They can be used as energy. The energy is carbon and can be burned in a way. Now, you can burn energy in the form of ATP and will release carbon dioxide into the air. The plant then can take that carbon dioxide and spit oxygen back in the air. This is a nice cycle that we do with plants. This is animals, this is plants, more or less, and this is a nice cycle that we do. But when we take dead, fossilized animals and plants, aka fossil fuel, when we take that out of the ground and combust that, it releases carbon dioxide into the air. Our carbon dioxide in the air, this is the greenhouse gas that we are worried about for global warming and climate change, because it traps the heat when the sun shines its light on the planet and it bounces off. It could go back into the atmosphere, into the space and be lost, or we can trap that heat with carbon dioxide. And that makes the planet hotter, and this is global warming, and causes all sorts of issues because the planet's not all supposed to be warm. It's really supposed to just be warm in the equatorial regions, in tropical regions, rainforests. And so this is why we have such an issue with too much carbon dioxide in the air, because it's not just us and the plants going through this nice cycle. We're taking a lot of extra carbon and burning it, combusting it, and anything that is carbon and hydrogen, called a hydrocarbon, can be burned when combined with oxygen. But this takes oxygen out of the air and puts CO2 into the air, which is the same thing that all animals and humans are doing. So we need plants to save us here. We need more plants to take this stuff out of the air, carbon, and release oxygen. This is called carbon sequestration, and plants have been doing it for billions of years, approximately 2 billion years, okay? And so they are the best technology that we have, okay? Now, how are you a fan of this type of energy? Fans are energy. The way that we get energy is all based on fans. We have windmills, we have water wheels, this is from a nuclear power plant, spinning. We have dams that take the gravity of water, move it through the dam, and spin turbine fans, and this generates energy. All of these things are based on fans. Now, the fossil fuels are what's used in a power plant that is not pictured here, okay? All of these different types of things are renewable or more efficient versions of power plants, okay? Whereas our current use, the biggest problem is that we're taking too much of this out of the ground and we are burning it in order to spin a fan in a power plant. So when you burn these things and you create that heat and light, the heat and light, in most, virtually all power plants, you are taking that and heating up water. And that water, when it boils, creates steam. And that steam rises and it spins a fan. This is how it works at Tucson Electric Power, at your local power company, whether they are burning wood or coal or oil, or whether you are burning natural gas. This is also how combustion cars work because you are turning your wheels. The whole thing is about spinning a fan. And you spin that fan in a power plant to generate energy. Now there's some magic physics there that it's not worth it for me to go into it because I don't know the physics as well with electricity. But I do know that what's actually going on inside of these power plants is that they're burning this, it boils water, the steam rises and spins a fan. And then they can sometimes take that steam and let it cool, condense, and go through the cycle over, okay? They lose the high pressure steam, but they can run that over. The problem is you have to continue burning more and more fossil fuels. So you have to continue pulling more fossil fuels out of the ground. And that means that you are taking all of this carbon that is grown millions of years ago that is locked up in the ground from volcanoes and erosion and earthquakes, these subductions, and has packed it in and locked that carbon in the ground. If you release that carbon and combust it, you're releasing that carbon dioxide into the air, which is our greenhouse gas that's trapping a lot of heat. Okay? So when we have plants taking in the carbon dioxide out of the air, that carbon sequestration, they are putting it back into the soil. They're putting it back into a living thing, right? And sequestering the carbon out of the air. Whereas when we have, I think I've got it, right? Is there a little more? I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anything, but it sounds pretty good. Thanks for joining.